Okay, welcome back, council. Everybody's here? Yeah. Okay, the regular council meeting. This meeting is being held electronically in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act. The procedures for the meeting are as per the town's procedural bylaw and the electronic meeting protocol. I will now ask the clerk to conduct a roll call of council present.
Deputy Mayor Nancy Alcock.
Present.
Councillor Dan Arbor.
Present.
Councillor Jason Fitzgerald.
Present.
Councillor Dion Schumacher.
Present.
Councillor Bob Stone.
Present.
Councillor Brian Thompson.
Present.
Councillor Tim Whitty.
Present.
Mayor Karen Terziano.
Present.
And we have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Weeb sends his regrets. He's not with us tonight. Again, all motions are moved and seconded. If you don't like one of the ones you're moving or seconding, just please mention it. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher and seconded by Deputy Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that the regular council meeting dated Monday, July 27th, 2020 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? That carries. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have an invited presentation from BIA. The BIA Director Morgan Richter and the Chair Rachel Hunt are going to do a verbal presentation to Council. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Your Worship. Glad to be here. Okay, so we were asked by the town to survey or to give you a recommendation for streetscape, whether we wanted to start it in 2021 or 2022. And so we asked our staff to send out a survey to our membership. So Morgan sent out surveys, emails, she did phone calls, and they've also walked around to talk to our membership. So we ended up getting back 62 replies, which is pretty good. So 35 of our members wanted 2021 as a start date, and 27 of our members wanted 2022. It was clear that the accelerated was what most of our members were requesting moving forward. So we decided at the meeting to bring you this information so that you guys can make a better decision on when to go ahead with construction and streetscape.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to ask Rachel and Morgan to stay with us until after Steve's presentation, but before Steve starts his presentation, are there any questions right now of either of the ladies? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Rachel and or Morgan. The response was 62 members of the BIA. How many members do you have in total?
I'm going to let Morgan answer that all together. I think it's 144. Morgan?
No, so I'm condensing what I had before I started and what I have now. And right now I'm at 103 businesses downtown.
So if I may further to that, Your Worship, so having a response on something of this magnitude, I mean, this is really important to, I would expect everyone in the BIA. I would have thought there might have been more response than 62 out of the 103 members responding to the survey. And I'm curious, I know your recommendation, I've read that, and I guess I'm curious, are you comfortable in making that recommendation based on the fact that 62 out of 103 only responded to the survey in the first place? And from what I understand, Morgan, I understand you tried very hard to get more people involved, but that was apparently fairly difficult for you. But are you comfortable with your recommendation based on the fact that 62 of 103 responded to the survey?
I think we are comfortable with that. I mean, obviously we would want everybody to voice their opinion and their concerns. But like you said, Councillor Thompson, Morgan did try her best. We all spoke to our neighbors about streetscape, and we tried to encourage as many members as possible to fill out the survey. Between the town survey and our survey, I think the communication was clear and it was there. Would we like to have more members speak up? Of course we would, but I think having 62 out of the 103 is pretty good considering surveys, how they go.
Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Worship. I'm a bit confused about the numbers in your document. I'm not sure how you've got 62 if when I add A, B, and C, that comes to 46. And presumably the 27 for 2022 didn't answer the A, B, or C, and that comes to 73. I'm wondering if you can shed light on, and if you add up, anyway, I'm not sure how you got your totals. I can't make it work.
So 62 businesses did answer me, and some did not give me one or the other. So as you can see, A, B, and C, several didn't give that information to me, and after following up, they didn't. It was more interested. People were more interested in 2021 versus 2022.
So that was 7 votes.
That good? Any others? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. A question I have to you, Morgan or Rachel, whoever can answer it. Is it a requirement that you own a business to be a member of the BIA?
Not necessarily. It's based on like a tax levy. So landlords are part of the BIA. Whether the landlord makes the tenant pay the levy or the landlord pays the levy. So this survey does have some landlords and business owners.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question. Out of your 103 businesses, Morgan, is that a combination of businesses and store owners, or is that actually 103 businesses?
That's 103 businesses or services. Yeah, not both.
Okay, and the 62 responses could have been a combination of building owners though and businesses, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But all of so about 52 of them are owners of the business, and 10 are their direct managers or who I contact.
Okay.
100% of the time.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so thank you. But if you don't mind staying just until Steve's report in case it triggers some further questions, would appreciate that.
Right, sure.
I'm going to read the resolution, Steve, before you start, and it's moved by Councillor Armour and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that Council accept the results of the Downtown Huntsville Business Improvement Area Survey and direct staff to communicate to the District of Muskoka that the town would like to proceed with the Main Street Streetscape project as presented to Council on May 27th, 2020, Resolution 14720, in 2021 under an accelerated construction schedule. Steve, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. I won't bother pulling up all the diagrams and going through it all again unless Council has some questions on it. Our survey that we did was open to all members of the public. We had 59 respondents. 73% indicated that they were a downtown business owner. We have no way to verify that, just so you're aware of that. The responses we received was very similar to what the BIA, what Morgan and Rachel had done with their group. We had a 66% of the respondents indicated that they wanted to see the accelerated schedule. And as well, we had a 66% of those people said that they'd like to see the project begin in 2021. So that is what my report is indicating, and that's my recommendation. And like I say, it lines up very nicely with what the BIA has done with their membership. And you know, as Rachel indicated, we would certainly like to have seen hundreds of people weigh in on the survey, but unfortunately, we just didn't get them. But we feel that these results are a good representation of the downtown, the people that live there, the people that work there, the people that own businesses. So happy to answer any questions we have on the report.
Thanks, Steve. Questions? Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not really a question, just some information of my own. I actually undertook my own survey of Main Street businesses and came up with a similar number of respondents. But in my case, I had only 44% wanting to do anything next year. But I think it bears comment to go deeper than just the numbers. One of the things I found interesting is that the 2021, 2022, or in fact beyond, because a number of the people that said 2022 said we should maybe even think of 2023 because of the pandemic. It really fell along lines of the businesses that weren't affected so much and the ones that were. So the ones that weren't affected were gung-ho to go right away. And the ones that weren't said, you can't do this to me next summer. It's going to absolutely kill our business. The other thing I found interesting is that the businesses that were for going ahead next year were very empathetic to their neighbors who were struggling, but insisted on confidentiality because they didn't want their struggling neighbors to know that they were voting for next summer. The other point I would like to make that 100% of the landlords I spoke to were against doing this next summer. I found it interesting that we all received an email from Kathy Sheridan recently saying that the BIA has only 4 board members that actually are business owners. My feeling is that there's a lot more to the story behind the numbers, and I think that because this is unknown, because they are businesses coming back this summer, because we're now at stage 3, they would prefer another stage 3 situation next summer. Hopefully, if it becomes that, if not, it gets dialed back because of surges. But to rip up Main Street next summer with the businesses that are really suffering now, they're going to be closed. They're going to be gone. And as I said, that's where the lines are drawn. And that's where I think, as I said, my survey, the majority wants to push it off past next year. And these aren't just numbers. These were quite long conversations I had with quite a number of people on Main Street. So I won't be supporting this motion. I would like to, at this time, ask the clerk to have a recorded vote on this motion, please. That's where I stand. Thank you.
Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. I have to say, this is one of the most difficult decisions I think I've been part of since being on council. And I listened very carefully to Councillor Withey's comments, and I, like everyone, have had those discussions with those who are not in favor of going next year. But I have also had discussions with business owners with very successful businesses on Main Street who have put forward the argument why it's equally important for them that we go and support the accelerated option, because in their view, if they don't see the business bouncing back anytime soon. And, and a lot of the reports that have been out there as to, when the airline industry will get back and all kinds of things that we've all looked at, would seem to suggest that that might be true. It could be equally slow next year from a COVID perspective, but that would mean that the following year, it could be wide open and hopefully a market that comes back, in 100%. And so I've had those discussions with some longtime business owners who feel equally strongly about going ahead. We must go ahead next year. So one of the things I was hoping, and I don't know where to ask this question, as I said, very hard decision for me at this point. I think I will be supporting the accelerated, but I would also want to know that we as a town monitor what happens to our businesses next summer, how it unfolds, and if there is a mechanism that we can do to shore, and I know people get a bit nervous when I say something like shore up those businesses. I don't want to see a couple of our, well, more, whatever, the loss of businesses because of this decision. So I almost feel like if we make this decision, we know that there will be businesses who, as Councillor Withey said, who may struggle next year. And so I feel like maybe it's a part A and a part B of this decision, that we're aware of it and we don't let it happen, and I'm not sure what the mechanisms are, but maybe we can ask staff to come back with what those mechanisms might be that would aid or do something to assist those businesses. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have actually two questions, and I guess the first one is, are we able to waive the half load limits and start earlier if we have a mild winter on the construction? And my second question, is there a drop dead date that if we decided, say in April of next year, that we're not going to go forward, that we could cancel the whole project, or would it cost us a lot of money? Thanks.
Steve?
Through you, Mayor Terziano. So Main Street is not restricted by half loads. So it could start as early as the frost is out of the ground. They could get construction going on that, so that's not a problem. The drop dead, because we want to have this planned well out in advance, the drop dead would probably be September of October of this year. So we want to go out right now to pre-qualifications for bidding companies. So canceling the contract in April would not be a possibility.
Councillor Schumacher.
So along those lines, through you, Mayor Terziano, to Director Hernan, would we put in place with the accelerated that there could be penalties if they went further than the expected timeline? Would be my question. And then a second part, I don't know if you want to answer that, and I'll do a follow-up.
Through you, Mayor Terziano, you can put penalties in a contract. When you put penalties in, you have to put bonuses in too. That's the way it works. And they're very hard to enforce one way or the other, because if they get some unusual weather that delays them, if they find a pipe in the ground that delays them that wasn't on a map, they'll blame the pipe, and it's very difficult to enforce. But they would have construction schedules, and bonuses could be put in, and penalties, but it just becomes a nightmare at the end of the job trying to enforce them.
Okay. Secondly, portions of the street will be closed down, right, to all through traffic. But I know you had mentioned, Director Hernan, that business obviously would still be open, people with pedestrian would still be able to do. So hopefully, if things are good for next summer, can we still do things like the Midnight Madness and those events, and possibly turn our weekends into pedestrian-friendly activities for the downtown core if we're not doing the construction over a weekend period? I know the accelerated means some evening work and that kind of thing. Would there be possibility to create pedestrian, without it being a hazard for people downtown, to create an opportunity for, I know, yes, I read Kathy's email, and I know Collingwood itself is trying, because they are doing some construction this year. There was a big thing on the news, how they've set up some very nice pedestrian businesses out onto the sidewalk, creating that sort of European feel for people to walk through. Is that a possibility? If we do the accelerated, could we still create that option of a pedestrian feel for the businesses next summer?
Through you, Mayor Terziano. So the sidewalks will always be maintained. So there'll always be pedestrian traffic maintained to the storefronts. So they'll always have access to the storefronts. That's going to be written into the contract, obviously. Could you hold a sidewalk sale, or could you hold a Midnight Madness? You could. We might have to move it up a block. We might have to move it back to a side street. We might have to be creative as we do it. But there will be times and periods where it just won't be feasible you'll have open pit trenches, which will be fenced off. So to have it filled back in for the weekend defeats the whole purpose of this accelerated schedule. The accelerated schedule is get in there and work quickly, hard, and as fast as you can, as safely as you can, and you get a 2-block stretch to keep you moving. So to ask them to put everything back together so we could hold an event on a Saturday or Sunday defeats that. But they could certainly, if they're working on the chunk in front of Town Hall, could an event be held on the chunk up in front of Farmer Save up at the top end? Certainly could be. That wouldn't be an issue at all.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think part of the answer to Councillor Schumacher's question is take a drive down King William Street from Cavalcade to Shoppers right now and how it was. And that's how it'll be on Main Street. It'll be an absolute disaster. I don't believe you can hold anything, any size, anywhere once this starts. And that's the problem that a lot of these businesses are having, is that, and in fact, talk to some of the merchants that are on King William that experienced what went on there. And, you know, it was a disaster for their businesses too. So further to Councillor Alcock, I think that's why a number of the people I spoke to said, it's not 2022, it's beyond. Because if you have another summer that's just stage 3 like this one, where there's limited traffic and masks and social distancing, and then throw construction on in 2022, that's piling on 3 summers in a row. And the businesses that might, if the streetscape happens next summer, the businesses that are struggling right now won't be around to benefit from the beautiful streetscape in 2022. They'll be already gone. So it's, to me, we've got to give them time, and that was the probably the most frequent repeated phrase is, I need a little more time. If you do this to me, I'm gone. And I just feel that I think it's a huge project. It's going to be as involved as it is on King William now, which you can, you know, everybody's been by it and seen the mess it is. I think it's a big mistake to get anything going next year at all, accelerated, not accelerated. One quick question, Steve, you mentioned about half loads. If half loads aren't on Main Street, isn't there half loads, like the trucks have to get to Main Street? Don't they have covered roads that might have half loads to get them there that might cause them to not be able to take a full load, even though Main Street isn't?
Steve?
Through you, Mayor Terziano, there's certain roads which half load are exempt. So you could get up Muskoka Road 3 right through to Highway 11. You could get out Aspen Road as far as, excuse me, Panalam. So you could get off Highway 11. You could, I'm trying to think where they'd want to get to, which is probably the local Corey's Pits and Corey's. There is certainly some available to them. There is some which are restricted by half loads. But if a contractor, if the weather dictates, could get in April, and that's what we'd be pushing for. And they could start to expose the pipes and start their drainage work and start the work on the Main Street Bridge, which is getting a refurb at the same time.
Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm just in response to Councillor Withey's comments. Again, I hear him for sure, and but I'm kind of wondering, you know, to the point of, if next summer we don't get the economic uptick that people are hopeful for, and a lot of people have said, a lot of people who seem to know that we may not. So it'd be another summer that's not so great. And if we decide to put the project off to the following summer, then we will have had 2 summers in a row where the economy was down, and then followed by the 3rd summer, which is the project. And if I look at it that way, I think, isn't that going to kill a lot of businesses? Because that would be 3 summers in a row, not 2. And so that's the first comment. And the second comment is, and this is to Director Hernan, my understanding is we're talking about this whole project because the state of the infrastructure is in serious need of replacement. So if we were to, and there's part of me that tweaked and I thought, okay, well, forget, 21, 22 and go hold out to 23. But is that possible, Director Hernan? My understanding is that the infrastructure needs to be replaced.
So through you, Mayor Terziano, the infrastructure has reached its useful life. They're having issues, small breaks, water mains, sewer mains. We're seeing street lights, which are crumbling that have to come down now. Could it last another year without a break? Nobody knows. Maybe you'll get 2 years, maybe you get 3 years, maybe by tomorrow morning we'll be into a major issue. But based on all the evidence they have, the video cameraing that they've done, it's reached its maximum useful life and it's time to replace the infrastructure. And I go back to the street light on Burnell Road. I can't find a simpler example that you can look at and see that street light and the poor shape it's in. And you can walk up the street and the next one's in great shape, and you walk a little further and you'll find another one which is crumbling. Will the street lights fall down tomorrow? Maybe not. Maybe they'll last another year. Maybe they'll be gone in a week.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Worship. I've appreciated some of the comments from councillors around the table, and I think that it's paramount that everyone know that we do want every business to thrive on Main Street. I think we have to remember that there's constantly a turnover on Main Street of businesses. Some that have closed down due to COVID. Unfortunately, maybe they would have closed down if COVID didn't happen. It's ever evolving, the businesses on Main Street. I think that to compare it to what's happened up on King William, where we have further up less access, we have all the side streets, which I'm assuming at any given time, you may have to walk 2 blocks. We have way more options for people to walk and access pedestrian traffic on Main Street. So I think it's not apples for apples comparing the two projects, currently what's being done and what's being proposed. And I do have a question for Director Hernan, and that's, in this accelerated plan, is there ever going to be a time where there is not 1-lane access for vehicular traffic?
Through you, Mayor Terziano, yes, there is. So when we're doing block by block construction, vehicle traffic is shut down. So there will be no vehicle traffic when they're going block by block. And when we give them the second block to accelerate and keep moving, there will be times when there'll be no vehicle traffic. So when they do the Main Street Bridge refurb from Burnell to the Main Street Bridge, that section of road will be shut down for approximately 2.5 months. And then as they move forward, as they catch up with their pipe laying work, that section of road from Burnell to West will then be shut down for vehicle traffic for approximately 2 months as they proceed through it. So there will be detours set up. The good news is, as the construction progresses up the road, the section behind reopens. And it will have basically, as you see on King William Street now, the base course asphalt will be down. There'll be some cleanup work on it. And then the final thing for the project will be coming in and they'll pave from one end to the other as a complete package.
Thank you.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple points of clarification. First of all, Councillor Alcock, I wasn't talking about 3 years in a row. I was counting this year, next year, which might be the same as this year with the stage 3, with the no construction, and then taking 2022 off. So you have, presumably, I'm not an expert. I've talked to physicians and other people that are in this field who are all saying, if you look at 1917, this will probably be a 2-year ordeal where it will run its course and then mutate out like it did back then when they didn't have even antibiotics, and will become part of the annual flu shot. That's pure speculation. But by going next year, that may sink businesses completely, and then having 2022, which would be wide open. I'm saying 2022 will still be wide open. Move it, see how next summer goes as far as what stage we're at, and maybe this thing disappears quicker, and then start in 2022. But if next summer is the same as this summer, bump it to 2023. So conversations I've had with Fred Yon and stuff is, nobody knows what is something could blow up underground tomorrow, or it could be 5 years from now. Sure, they've run their cameras and they've seen little cracks and stuff, but I haven't heard that this is an urgency thing. As far as the streetlights go, if that's a problem, take the streetlights down like you did at Deerhurst. Just knock those down anyway if they're going to fall on somebody's head. Just to clarify to Councillor Fitzgerald, when I was talking about King William, it wasn't about walking down sidewalks and access to main streets. I was using that comparison more along the lines of the suitability for things like a sidewalk sale or a Midnight Madness or something, which that's where the comparison is. Along with, though, having talked to businesses up that way who have said quite clearly to me how disruptive the road construction was to their businesses and how much business they lost. So I just wanted to make those points of clarification. I still believe we don't go next year. We see about the year after. And hopefully we have no vacancies on Main Street because of COVID or anything else. Thank you.
Rachel, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Terziano. I just wanted to make a comment to Councillor Withley's comment about only 4 board members being business owners. And with that being true, I just wanted to make it clear that most of us who sit on the board are speaking on behalf of our owners, operators. That I know for myself, I go back and I speak to the owners of PharmaSave, and I'm kind of representing them at the same time. So I just wanted to make it clear that we're all trying to do our best. I'm not going to pretend that I know what it's going to be like for the business owners of downtown. This is a really hard decision for you as a town. We appreciate the fact that you asked for our input. I think moving forward, we have talked about streetscape the last 2 to 3 years at the BIA level, and we are working really hard on marketing campaigns and communication and making sure that we do everything we possibly can that's in our capabilities to be able to make sure that the community knows, that tourism knows that we are open for business regardless of construction. None of us could have predicted COVID would throw this into the mix. But I just want you guys to be aware that we are behind all of the businesses in downtown, and this is a hard decision for all of you, and I'm so glad we are not in that position to make that choice. But I know working with the town and working with the chamber and with the BIA, we've become quite the force to be able to support our businesses the best way we can, and we're going to try to make sure that we are there for them throughout this entire project, whether it's 2021 or 2022. I think it's important that you know that we are behind all of our businesses full force. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Rachel. And it's also important to note that the BIA board did not vote and make a recommendation. They simply presented the results of the survey, which presumably were done by business owners. I just want to say, Councillor Stone and I, Councillor Stone, who's the BIA rep, we were having a discussion earlier today and talking about, if this resolution goes through tonight, about getting a plan in place to how we can best mitigate the impact on the downtown core and the businesses. And we'll start working on that as soon as we make a decision, not because we care about the downtown core any more than King William, but because we learned a lot from King William. We learned how impactful the construction was to those businesses. We probably learned too late to really be able to do as much as we would like to do. This time around, once our decision is made for when we start, we will start putting whatever measures in place that we can and working towards making it as painless as possible. We know that it's going to be tough, but we know it's going to happen. And I'm not so sure that the district, you must remember, this is still a district road and a district project, that the district would allow us to push it as far as 2023. So I'm not really even sure that that's an option. With that, I think I saw one more hand. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, Rachel, for your clarification on the membership of the BIA board. I had assumed that people in management like yourself have the blessings of the ownership, and so I thank you for that clarification on that. And my final comment on this, Your Worship, would be to agree with a comment made by Councillor Alcock, and that would be with regards to the possibility that if COVID-19 does linger on and become as impactful in 2021 as it is in 2020, then we would have lost the opportunity to take advantage of a downturn in any event. So all things being equal, Your Worship, I'm going to vote in favor of the resolution, and I'm more than happy to be part of the recorded vote on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. If there's no further questions, and if the BIA is satisfied with their input, I'm going to ask the clerk to do a recorded vote as requested.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. Councillor Dan Armour,
Yes.
Councillor Jason Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Councillor Dion Schumacher,
Yes, in favor.
Councillor Bob Stone,
Yes.
Councillor Brian Thompson,
Yes.
Councillor Tim Whitby,
No.
Deputy Mayor Nancy Alcock,
Yes.
Mayor Terziano.
Yes.
That's a vote of 7-1, so the vote is carried.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel Morgan. Thanks very much for being with us. Our next deputation is Paul Myers from Main Street. And just so people don't think we're doing things backwards, what we just approved there was the timelines. Paul's here to talk to us about design, so we're not sort of jumping the gun. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you. So am I good to go? Hello? Can you hear me, Karen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm here to talk about Kent Park. Kent Park being the space adjoining the building I own at 4 Brunel Road. And I just want to start this, make it very clear that I'm here to speak for Kent Park, not for myself and my own personal interests in this matter. So what has happened is the design for Kent Park was originally produced by the Planning Partnership. It became part of the design brief that's on the Engage Muskoka website. And it talked about connecting the park to the adjoining buildings in much the same way as Rivermill Park on the rear side of all those Main Street buildings. We're struggling to get those buildings to connect to the park because that's good urban design. Now, what's happened subsequently is, I guess there were a couple of decisions made by council about Kent Park, nixing the parking, forgetting about the water feature, and that's as far as it went. So the engineering company involved here have gone ahead and come up with a design for the park that completely ignores the design brief that they were given. That's on the Engage Muskoka website. So, so when I saw that, I contacted Steve Hernan, who very kindly met me on site. I discussed with him my concerns. He then arranged for a further meeting with Les Ranter, who's an engineer from EXP involved in this process. And we met, and I explained to him what the concerns were. And his response was, okay, well, there's going to be some design changes that are going to cost money, et cetera, et cetera. And he went away and produced an email outlining what the costs were going to be for me in order to have this connection made that they were asked to do in the first place by the design brief. So that's where we got. They suggested that $4,000 to $6,000 was the appropriate amount of money to change the design that they already had. I gave them a modification of the design. I think it's in your paperwork. They just wanted to be proactive and show how easy it was. They also said that the budget for the park was $400,000, quite a bit of money, and they figured 10% of that would be a cost accruing to me, again, in order to make the connection between my building and the park. So this, I thought I would take it further because I think that was just a way of trying to make me go away. And I didn't feel like doing that because I have a concern, not just for my own personal building, but for the design of the park should be as good as we can possibly make it. We were instructed by the planning partnership. We engaged them. They were here for 3 days. There was extensive public input. They produced a superb piece of work at the end of it that I think we all said was great. And it became the basis for the work that we're doing now. Specifically for Kent Park, there were directions about how the connections needed to be made with the adjoining buildings. So this has somehow all got ignored or thrown out in the process. And I don't see an urban designer in the mix here making these subsequent decisions. They're engineers. They talked to me about, they had a landscape architect who was involved in some of the work on Kent Park, but no urban designers, nobody with that sensibility about how you make places work, how you make places come alive. And that's one of the big concerns for Kent Park, that it just doesn't become this sort of dank little corner where skateboarders hang out, or you want to make a connection to the living part of the town, which is the adjoining buildings. So that's why I'm here. I wanted to bring it to your attention and make sure that I'm not sure how far along the decisions are at this point. I've been told that the decisions have all been made for design work by somebody. And then I was also told that council were going to make decisions about what was going to happen in August. So I'm not sure where it all sits at this point, but I have a concern that the park's going to be not as good as it should be. Let's just leave it at that. So that's why I'm here. I'm happy to, if I can be of any help, I'm happy to volunteer my time. I've been in design and construction and manufacturing my whole life. I do know a little bit about this. We were very involved in the streetscape in the 90s with Sven Midland, where we engaged a professor of urban planning to come up here and educate us, so we knew how to make decisions, what the criteria were, etc. And it just seems to me that at this point in our process, and you guys are under a lot of stress with everything that's going on, and I fully understand that. I'm not laying blame on anyone, but I'm concerned that the thing is moving forward without the right decision-making people being involved. I don't think engineers are skilled at design work. I'm sure the pipes will be flawless, the asphalt will be great, but the urban design element is a very separate thing. So I'm hoping we can make some decisions that improve what seems to be happening at the moment, and that's what I got. So thanks for the time. While I have you, I was going to suggest a couple of other things. One, it might be, I know there's a whole issue about scheduling for the whole process for next year. I'm not sure what the decision is. Kent Park could be done as a separate piece without impacting on any of the road work, I think. And that might be something to consider. It might get us a little piece of the work done in advance without impacting any of the downtown retailers. So that work could be done. And I'd also suggest it goes out for tender, because 400 grand for the work that they're suggesting from the drawings I've seen seems like quite a bit of money. So, anyways, that's what I got. Thanks for your time. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Paul. I'm sure there will be some questions, so if you hang
Okay.
around, I say first, Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship, and thanks, Paul. It's good to see you. You're looking healthy and well and vibrant. And
So far.
Yeah, I was shocked by that 400,000 number. For what, what we've seen. I don't know where that came from, and I'm glad you pointed that out. I for one wasn't for taking the parking out of the park in the first place, but I got outvoted. But I'm happy to see that you're involved, and I think that you would bring. Well, you've got some excellent ideas and input, and even input about getting other experts involved other than what's shown up so far. I guess the question would be, is the $400,000, maybe Steve Hernan is this the number that we've got put aside for this park? Because that sounds huge to me. Thank you.
Steve, do you want to come in? I don't know if you have numbers. I know we've all been presented with the numbers, and there was a breakdown for Kent Park. I just don't have them at my fingertips.
Yes, I will certainly, Mayor Terziano, answer a few questions. The 400,000 is a budget number right now that's being carried with the contingency. It's actually right in line with the planning partners numbers, which they put together with a concept when they originally presented this, the document that Paul is referring to. So the two are lined right up. In regards to Les Ranta involvement in this and Les's meeting with Paul on site and Les's meeting with 5 other business owners today, he's the lead contact for the company EXP. Sally Wong, Sally had presented to council a couple times and was at the public open houses. She's the urban planner on this project with a whole team behind her. And I don't have a resume in front of me, but I believe she has 15 years experience in urban planning. So EXP has multiple disciplines and multiple people. Last week, 2 weeks ago, there was 3 electrical engineers up looking at the placement of streetlights. One of them was an urban planner, one was the engineer for the electrical side, one was a landscape architect. So EXP brings all the expertise they need into the project at different times. So when Paul met with Les, yes, Les is the lead consultant. He is an engineer, has an office here in town. But please don't think that Les is doing this on his own, because he's not. He has a huge team behind him. I just want to touch on the planning partners vision for Kent Park. And there was 5 things that the planning partners had done and their direction or their recommendation. They had multiple different drawings. The one thing they said was create a visual and physical open and accessible public space. And if you recall, right, that was the direction that council, when we brought some of the first drawings back, sent us back to say, no, we want more of an open center and we want access from multiple spots. The planning partners said remove the parking. That has been removed. The planning partners said create a flexible space for small gatherings for day-to-day use. And that was a direction that council told us to go back and put a small raised stage in the back that'll be framed in with streetlights and it'll look nice. And the planning partners said that we need to showcase Huntsville landscape, materials and craftsmanship. And that's where we keep talking about these granite boulders, and council will see more drawings before we get into it from some of the work that the Sally Wong and her group is doing, showing some of these things and what the vision for this will be. The 5th item was encourage active edges around the park, and that's what Paul is referring to. I know Paul and I have had some discussions, and we've looked at the planning partners, one of the planning partners concept drawings, which shows storefronts around the edges. But the planning partner in their brief was also very clear, and they said that we had to be, let me just read it to you. It's important not to privatize the building edges for parking deliveries or to create private open spaces. So they were very clear in that. So I just wanted to point some of that stuff out. I really do think when I went back and looked at the design brief, it's on the website as Paul's indicated. I really do think that the 2 or 3 drawings that we've brought forward to council to sort of give the direction on it have checked the boxes. And it doesn't mean that encouraging active edges still can't be done. And when we met with Paul, we were just trying to get a feel for what exactly he was looking for. The costing that was provided to Paul is if we're doing extras, that there is costs involved, was to give a magnitude of what costing we could be looked at. But we were very clear that until things are tendered, we never know the exact cost. And so, if you want to state that the estimates are high, we'll go back and look at them. Today, I received a document from EXP on an 80% construction final drawings, which shows a $13 million project right now. It's still carrying a 20% contingency in it, which is a huge contingency, but we're still narrowing down the numbers. And we're making sure, and the reason we keep checking the numbers is to make sure that we haven't gone totally astray. If we designed a beautiful Main Street and then I walked back in and told you it was going to cost 52 million, I know we'd be sent back to the drawing board to look at it again. So we're constantly evaluating these numbers. And I really stress that EXP has a full team behind them that I have full confidence in. And I will make sure that they're back before council with engineered design drawings. We'll get right into the nitty gritty with some concept drawings too. Some pretty pictures to show you what their envision is. And I think you'll see that it meets and checks the boxes of the planning partners. And you know, if Mr. Myers, if we can still do something at the sidelines, if that's council's direction, we certainly can. But as I indicated to Paul, I had direction from council. We brought different drawings forth. I can't remember, we ended up with 4C or something we called it. And that was the option that council gave us the direction to go ahead and start working with. And that still checks the boxes if you read the planning partners' objectives for that space. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to say thank you, Paul, for coming forward. I know that you have a strong background in design and in fact, urban design. So it's really appreciated. And I, for one, and Steve, am looking forward to seeing the pictures and the drawings at our August meeting. Because I agree, I certainly, we only get one crack at this and I hope we do it the right way. So I do have a question though, Paul, before you go. You made reference to the fact that we had completely ignored the recommendations in the planning partnership brief with respect to Kent Park. And so I just want to be sure that I know all of the recommendations that we ignored, because Steve just walked through a few that we certainly, you know, we got rid of parking and we still have our big boulders, Muskoka moments that they suggested. And I know that that was a big discussion around this table. So I think that was one of their recommendations. And I want to be sure that I understand from you what you think we have ignored, so that I just want to know what for our August discussion.
Yeah, okay, so clearly some of the things have been acknowledged. I fully understand that. I'm not suggesting that everything was ignored. I'm suggesting that I think they refer to it as the edges of the park in the design brief. That's the issue. That's the issue that's been ignored. And I'm not trying to be disparaging here. I don't know whether that was a design decision that was made. And just to refer back to Steve Hernan's comments, I was told that Sally Wong was a landscape architect. I did try and find out who was the urban planner, and I was never given a name for anyone except Sally Wong as a landscape architect. So that's a different discipline to an urban designer. So back to your thing. So yeah, so I'm not suggesting that everything's a disaster. I'm suggesting that one of the key pieces of the design brief was the connection to the surrounding buildings, because that's what brings that space to life. We've had it as it is for a long time, and I'm very aware of it. I've owned that building for 30 years. I've been there a lot, and I see how it interacts with the public, and it's not particularly great, partly because it's been parking a lot as well for a lot of the time. But I do feel that this notion of having the building faces interact with the park is an important one. And as I pointed out, Rivermill Park will be a great example of that. When all those stores renovate their rears to face the park, that's what we need. And I think Kent Park is exactly that, same thing. So I think that should be a driving force in the design of the park. So yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? So, Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick one. Paul, if there was some changes we wanted to make there, is there a dollar figure that you would have in mind that you would be able to assist in getting something done?
How much would I pay to have a change made? Well, I would maybe price it out as a contractor. I could probably do that. figure out what the upcharge would be for doing this. But it's not $45,000, shall we say, as was suggested. It's really when you're doing this work, it's not much at all. I'm just looking for a little raised area that connects to the stage that's already been provided. And potentially I was looking for a disabled ramp because those buildings on Brunel are problematic for getting a disabled access into. And this was a chance to do that at the same time. A ramp would run from Brunel parallel to the building up to the stage, towards the stage area, and that would give us that disabled access. So, yeah, if that's what it comes down to, yeah, I would certainly look at that and make a contribution if that was required. But I'd like it to be a contribution that's a realistic one, not 45 grand, because clearly that's an absurd number. I have to say, it was a bit offended by that. But yeah, so if I can help out, I will, yeah.
So we are getting some further drawings prepared for our August meeting. We have passed a resolution already for the design of the downtown, but we do have a couple of other small things that we haven't finalized yet. So we're going to relook at everything, and we certainly can relook at Kent Park, and we will make sure that we have more than a doodle on a napkin that we're approving at that time. And I'm sure we'll have a couple more conversations before we get to that stage. So appreciate you taking the time to come in, and you'll hear from me for sure.
Okay, look forward to that, Karen. Thanks very much for your time. I very
Great.
much appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Paul.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Okay. That's the end of streetscape. We're moving on to minutes. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the regular council meeting minutes dated June 24th, 2020 be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Questions? All in favor? That carries. Information reports, the BIA Board of Management, Councillor Stone.
Our past few meetings have been totally involved with streetscape. You've heard from Morgan and Rachel already. I really don't have anything to add to that. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to speak to what the board's been doing.
Any questions from council? Okay, stay on the hot seat, and we have committee of adjustment. Anything to highlight from that?
Nothing eventful, actually. Everything was quite slick.
It was a long agenda, though, it looked like. That was
Well, I
your,
think it
that
was
was
a
your
long-
first meeting since COVID, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. But it
Great.
moved along very, very quickly, actually.
Oh, happy to hear that. Any questions? No. Okay, Planning Committee. I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting minutes dated July 21st, 2020, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I thought the Committee of Adjustment minutes, they looked really long too. That was a long agenda. Ours wasn't as long. We approved 5 zoning bylaw amendments, 2 of which were for the approval of short-term rentals within a secondary residential dwelling unit. There was a lot of really interesting discussion around that because staff were not able to recommend approval. We as a committee turned that over and recommended approval and replaced denial with that. Partially because the people that had applied for this zoning amendment have run short-term rentals for years. So they were actually they were going through the licensing project so that they'd be legitimate now that we're going ahead with that. And this was part of the process. So in both cases, they explained that they had been doing it for years. They've excellent, reputation, and if we had turned it down, they wouldn't have had any intention of renting out as a long-term rental. So committee was we were unanimous on approving those. We also approved 2 zoning bylaw amendments for the creation of 2 rural lots, and 1 for a shoreline residential with an exception to allow a decrease in the front yard setback. We had a public meeting on another proposed lot severance, but it was for information only in Port Sydney. And then finally, committee discussed the issues that we all received regarding 253 Marsh Road and the ongoing activity that's going there as far as site alteration, building lot clearances and that sort of thing. And it's one of those situations where, given our current lack of bylaws to cover site alteration and tree cutting and that sort of thing, committee one, we talked about we will be able to do this when we have a community permit system, but that's not anytime soon. We need lots of public meetings and all of that. So committee asked staff to come back to our August meeting with a report on what might be temporary measures to deal with things around site alteration or tree cutting or clearance. And so staff will come back with a report, and hopefully there is something that we can look at from a temporary measure. And with that, I think that's my report.
Questions from council? All in favor of the resolution? That carries. Have a resolution moved by Councillor Withey and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the general committee meeting minutes dated July 9th, 2020, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated, with the exception of recommendation GC 4-20 to be pulled and voted on separately. So that was our first general committee, and I guess I was chairing that, and I didn't really pay attention to whether there was anything to highlight on that. So I'm just going to say, if there's no questions, if there's any questions, fire away. Okay, so all in favor of the resolutions aside from the one that we pulled? And that carries. Okay, so I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that the projects identified in Report Corp 2020-30 Appendix A be approved, and further that staff be directed to proceed with implementing each of the items identified, and further that any projects not initiated or completed by December 31st, 2020 be cancelled. And Councillor Withey asked for this to be pulled, and would you like to speak to it, Councillor?
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. As you may recall, there was a discussion at the last meeting about this list and what it was comprised of, and what the intent of the money was for, and what and the parameters around the money, when and how it had to be spent. There was a couple of issues on the list or with the list that I had as far as what it entailed. I felt that we didn't really have a lot. We were just sort of presented with a full list that spent the entire sum of money without having much input on other things or projects that we may find worthy for this money. This money was given to us as a one-time payment based to help efficient service delivery, etc. The investment is unconditional, and my research shows that it's probably not going to come around as a project again, and that there is no timelines on spending this money. So in other words, there isn't a December 31st date that this has to be spent by or else sort of thing. I know that in our committee meeting prior to the general committee, Mayor Terziano suggested perhaps we park this in a reserve until we have more time to look at potential other uses for this cash. I agree with that. I think I don't think we need to accept this. I just think this list is being thrown at us without any discussion for the total amount. A lot of it's public work stuff. There's certain other areas that I think we could investigate spending this money to really look at, what it was intended for. If I go, I've got the minister's letter here in front of me. Delivering provincial services, many people across taxpayers deserve modern, efficient service delivery that puts people at the center and respects hard-earned dollars. Well, I would note that on the list that was presenting to us, there's a $50,000 wood chipper. I don't know that that's exactly in the spirit of this fund. So that's my suggestion, is that we put this in a reserve and we set up a process to identify the types of things that were outlined in Minister Clark's letter for the spirit of the what the funding was for. I did reach out and spoke to Mayor Smith in Bracebridge and would note that that's not that I always say, we should follow other municipalities. I know you've heard that from me before, but they in fact have put theirs in a reserve for the time being until they figure it out as well. Thank you.
Madam CAO, would you like to weigh in on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. So at the end of the day, it really is Council's decision if they wish to proceed with the recommendations that have been put forward by staff. We were very aware of the one-time funding and the fact that it actually came with no strings attached. However, there were recommendations on how the funding should be spent. And as Councillor Withey alluded to, obviously efficiencies was one of those. So due to the fact that we have been advised that the province is doing future intakes with respect to the modernization fund, we felt that due to the fact that we've had this money, I want to say it's well over a year, we did review at budget time where the funds could potentially be spent and offset perhaps some programs or some purchases that would meet that, meet the efficiency criteria. And at that time, we actually didn't have a lot that we came up with that could be completed within that budget year. So the funds remained in a reserve. There was an intake one of the additional modernization money that we did apply for. It was for our community services master plan, which we were not successful in. Council will also recall that we do have a list of projects that they agreed to that we would potentially submit a future joint application with other municipalities in the District of Muskoka. So we do have a list of those items. In discussion with area CAOs, specifically the district, they have committed all of their modernization money. So the district councillors would certainly be aware of that, that those funds have been committed to various projects that will result in efficiencies. And I know that some of the other municipalities, lower tier, were looking at potentially committing those funds as well. But I haven't heard the status on those other areas. So we just felt as staff that it was prudent for us to bring forward a list of items that we felt strongly would result in efficiencies. It wasn't just throwing a whole bunch of projects in a hat. We actually had some criteria that we weighted the projects against. And those projects had to meet that criteria, and the ones that showed up in the list were the ones that we felt would meet that criteria. So at the end of the day, it's certainly council's decision. If council wishes to leave the funds in a reserve for a specific project moving forward, that's certainly your prerogative if you wish to do so. But staff just felt with future funding potentially coming with the modernization funding that it would be prudent for us to dedicate those funds that we've had for well over a year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, Your Worship.
Thank you. Just before we go to that, I'm going to ask our manager of finance if she might have anything to add, because actually this is your report, not the CAO's. Sorry about that. Julia.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we did look at this, we did look at looking at efficiencies, so they were in the spirit of what the letter was, and it's just important to note that efficiencies don't always look the same across each of the departments. It does look a little bit different, and we just want to make sure that we're going ahead with this money so that we are realizing those efficiencies as quickly as we can. I just want to note one thing as well as the projects that were listed in the report. So that's the work order system, the IT service, and the planning technician. Those are all items that have been identified in the past. So we would still be looking, if we are changing anything, just to make sure that we're still going forward with those projects.
Great. Thanks for that. I saw a hand just before I went to Julia. Was it Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think Councillor Alcock had her hand up prior to me, but I'll take this opportunity to go. Yeah, I've looked at the list, and as has been pointed out, this has been in reserve now for over a year. Some of the items that are on this budget had been part of this this report, I should say, had been part of the budgeting process and were eliminated because of budgeting constraints and so on and so forth. So now they're actually being put in there. I don't really see anything, as I said, in general committee, and I used the word, and I'll say it again, I don't see anything in this list of items that is frivolous in nature at all. If the purpose of this funding in the first place was for efficiencies, then that's exactly what these items are for. And I know at Public Works, we're constantly looking for efficiencies, and it's working. Anything to do with items here for Public Works, you can be guaranteed that it's not just something we're not throwing something at the wall here. It's because it's going to make operations more efficient and make our staff more efficient. So yeah, I'm totally happy with this list, and I wouldn't touch it at all. Thanks.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor Alcock, I missed you.
No worries. Thank you, Your Worship. I think I was supportive of the list before, but I also hear what Councillor Withey is saying in the sense of making sure that this meets some of the council priority. Again, I looked at the list, and there are a number that I'm very supportive of, such as the community park master plan. But I guess my question really is to Councillor Withey, in the sense that it was interesting about we don't have a timeline, or deadline, I guess you could say. When were you thinking that it might be kicked back, and would we create a new committee to look at these? And are there some projects that you think that clearly should be on here that have been missed? So that's the part I'm sort of curious about. And if that's the case, is it possible that they could be covered in the second intake? If I'm right to assume that we are applying for the money from the second intake as well. I'm looking at Denise and Julia to see if either of them are nodding. But really my question is for Councillor Withey. Thank you.
Councillor Withey?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Alcock. So this money that came March 20 with the letter dated March 20, 2019 was a one-time payment. So every municipality got something based on, so this isn't something that was applied for, it's another intake coming or what have you. And it's probably not going to happen like this again. So that's why I'm saying that there's no deadline, this isn't going to have another application for any other money, as far as I've been told and as far as I understand it. As far as the actual list goes, I mean, there's lots of things on that list that I like. There's things on that list that I would add. I think that one of the things that personally I think that we should invest more in this town is public transit. Now, I know that's kind of weird to say in the middle of a pandemic, but we will get out the other side of this one day. And that's one thing that really helps a municipality grow and gets people to work and et cetera, et cetera. I think that's very important. And this to me would fit in there. I guess I saw the list and it sort of matched the funding to the penny and was like, let's spend it now. And I kind of felt like there wasn't any other chance to have input into this, as we look at some of these things individually, sort of like what we do with a budget. We were sort of handed this list with the total and said, let's go. So that's where I think, we talked about those traffic lights that go around construction sites instead of signal people, which, to me, that's like self-serve checkouts in the grocery store. You're eliminating employment for people, mostly students that do those jobs. But I thought it would be great to invest in some of those speed signs that you see on a lot of district roads and around in Muskoka Lakes. That could be something on the list, because I know I'm getting a lot of complaints over in my area, East Browns Road, that's just a racetrack from the top of the hill to the bottom. And same with, on my street, where our local community actually bought our own speed sign to put out there because it was so bad, particularly with the big trucks. So, it's not about the whole entire list. There's quite a lot of things on that list I think we could approve tonight. And there's some things that I think, we can pull back and maybe do some consideration on other things that we may find as council to be a priority over some of the other stuff. How we do that, what the procedure is for that, I don't have the magic answer to that one, but I don't think it's something we can't figure out quite quickly. Thank you.
Okay. I certainly understand where you think that if we found some or identified some areas that weren't on this list, but we haven't done that as of yet. There is some concern that if we don't spend the money, that we would not be eligible to make application for a secondary fund. I know we didn't have to make application for this one, but there is some fear of that. I'm not really ready to take that chance just to put money in a reserve. The list is a little bit operations heavy, but I would have no problem if we came up with an efficient modernization, something in another department in 3 months of taking some money out of operations to cover it, because they got the bulk of this fund. But I don't want to take the chance of losing out on future funds. So I'd be prepared to approve this, but I'd also be prepared to put a motion on the table down the road if there were something that we thought would be a good spend, that it might be dipping into the ops budget to get it. So, Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. I tend to agree with you. My fear would be if we were to put this money into a reserve and 3 months, 4 months down the road, the government does check in to see if the money's been spent and we're just hoarding it away in a bank account. What's the options of getting more money? I think we need to move on that now and have ourselves available for more fund maybe in the future.
Councillor Whitney.
Thank you, Worship. Those were the specific questions I asked Mayor Smith in Bracebridge, who also sits on AMO, and he did not have that concern whatsoever. This money was basically a one-time gift, which is why he said it's not likely to be repeated. It's got no strings attached, and do whatever you want, whenever you want, was his opinion. I often talk to him because of his connection with AMO and all the people he talks to. So that is not a fear of mine whatsoever. Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, you all heard the resolution? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, I've only seen 3 hands in total, so let's start again. All in favor?
Excuse me, can you repeat the motion?
Sure. Be it resolved that the projects identified in Corp 2020-30 Appendix A be approved, and further that staff be directed to proceed with implementing each of the items identified, and further that any projects not initiated or completed by December 31st be canceled. All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay. Reports from municipal officers. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that council approve the Yard and Fleet Administrator to issue a tender in 2020 for the purchase of one tandem axle combination dump plow truck at an approximate cost of $300,000, and further that the amount be included in the 2021 capital budget. Steve, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. What we're just looking for is approval to go out on an early purchase. We did it last year. Council gave us permission, if you remember, going into the budget process. Those two trucks are being delivered next week and they'll be ready for service for this winter coming up. If we wait until the budget process is approved and we place the order, the truck is always at least a year behind. So what we're simply asking for is permission to proceed to tender right now on another plow truck. Yeah, we'll be probably asking every year to go early on these big trucks because of the timeframes involved, recognizing that it's a budget item for 2021. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, not a question, but a comment. And this worked so well for us last year, and we know that this is going to be part of our fleet budget for 2021. So I think this is just a prudent move, and it means that we'll have the equipment in place exactly in time for when we need it. So I would encourage council to approve this. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the resolution? That carries. Thank you. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withey, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the draft 2020 asset management plan is attached in Appendix A to Corp 2020-31 be approved as presented. And Julia and Riva, or one of you or two of you, both of you are here. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm going to start just with a quick overview. So this is a fairly large document, and we will have a little bit of a breakdown on it. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we actually started this process quite a while ago. We started back in 2008 when we actually took an inventory of all of our assets for the town because it had never been done before. So that was going through and making a record of all the roads and bridges and street signs and all the other things, street lights, all the assets that had never been recorded in our books before. So it's been quite a process. We have over 10,000 records of our assets. So that's individual asset items. And we did, Huntsville was the first one to put out an RFP for the asset management plan that included the new Ontario regulation 588-17. So that was pretty exciting. And on page 10, you'll see the progress that we've made, and we're quite ahead of where we need to be as far as the regulation and the requirements. And I just want to thank all of our staff that have been working towards this, as well as some of the councillors. I know Tim, Councillor Withey, and also our mayor sat in on some asset management meetings. So it's been a lot of work that's been put into this document. I just wanted to thank all the staff that have put so much work into it. So I'm going to turn it over to Riva, and she's going to give a high-level summary of the document.
Thanks, Julia. So in December of 2017, the Ontario government introduced Regulation 588-17, and that's for asset management planning for municipal infrastructure. So in order to meet the requirements set forth in the regulation, town staff have been working, like Julia said, with our consultants PSD since mid-2018 on the town's asset management project. So this project included a whole bunch of stages over the last 2 years. So things like creating our asset management policy, completing an inventory listing of the town's core infrastructure. So things like roads, bridges, and the stormwater network. We also took an inventory of many of the non-core assets, so things like facilities, equipment, machinery, land improvements, all of that stuff. It also included condition and risk assessments of all of our assets, creating levels of service frameworks for the core infrastructure assets, and now the creation of the asset management plan. And that plan includes both life cycle management and financial strategies. So municipalities are actually responsible for managing a broad portfolio of assets that deliver services to the community. So the goal of asset management is to minimize the cost of the asset, mitigate the associated risk of the asset, and maximize the value that ratepayers are receiving from the assets. In this AMP, or the draft AMP, the town has achieved compliance with the requirements of OREG 58817 that must be completed by July 2021. So we're ahead of schedule, which is great. We also have partial compliance with the July 2023 requirements. There are also some additional requirements concerning proposed levels of service and growth that need to be met by July 1st of 2024, and that'll be addressed in future updates of the asset management plan. So it's important to note that the draft asset management plan is actually, it's a snapshot in time based on the data that we have available. So this data and information is continuously being updated and improved on. An example of this continuous improvement includes updating the condition assessments and replacement costs of the town's roads and bridges. So this year, in 2020, there's a roads needs study that's currently being completed. And the findings of that will be implemented into our asset management database. So this data update could, and likely will, completely change the road asset management plan, since it's quite possible that roads are in better condition than our existing data suggests. An asset management plan is a very fluid, living document that's constantly changing and is really to be used as a planning tool going forward. The asset management plan outlines the state of existing municipal infrastructure and the town's financial capacity to meet sustainability requirements. So based on the current data, 58% of the assets analyzed are in fair or better condition, which is great. If all town assets were to be replaced today, it would cost the town about $298 million, which equates to just over $15,000 per resident. It's not likely that we're going to have to replace all of our assets at one point. So again, we're continuing to refine this data and aim to update the replacement costing and condition assessments regularly to ensure that this is as accurate as possible. So at this point in time, there's been a capital funding deficit identified of about $5.4 million annually. This means that in order to sustain the current level of service with the existing assets, the average annual capital requirement is about $10.1 million, but the town's only currently levying about $4.7 million for capital. A financial strategy is therefore needed to help close the funding gap. The draft asset management plan recommends that this infrastructure deficit be gradually reduced over the next 20 years by increasing the levy about 1.4% annually. The AMP, or asset management plan, does not factor in, though, that we've already been gradually increasing our annual capital levy each year. So we're effectively already reducing this capital funding deficit. One of the main focuses of the core infrastructure assets, so the roads, bridges, and stormwater network, relates to life cycle management strategies. So you'll see in the draft AMP, specifically in the roads sections of the report, that there are several different life cycle strategies that are currently in place, and some proposed optimized strategy that'll help extend the life of the asset, increase service levels to ratepayers, and help optimize maintenance costs so the town's getting the most bang for their buck. If the town were to not employ any of the life cycle management strategies that we currently have in place, the annual roads requirements would actually be about $10.2 million. So under the current strategies that we're doing right now, the annual requirement has been reduced to $4.5 million, which is fantastic. So essentially, we're making the assets last longer by doing this. Using the optimized life cycle strategies in the report, the annual requirement would actually increase by about $20,000 a year, but the benefits of applying these optimized strategies include fewer rehabilitation treatments, so less disruption to the ratepayers, less reactive maintenance required if or when an asset fails, and a longer useful life for the asset, and providing improved level of service to the public. So I just want to reiterate that this asset management plan is a planning tool for the town to use when preparing annual budgets and determining capital projects. It's continuously changing since it's tied to the underlying asset management database. So town staff are and will continue to review and update this data, including replacement costs, anticipated replacement dates, condition and risk assessments, and we perform regular data gap analysis to ensure that the database is as complete as possible. It really is a fluid document, and it's just expected to keep getting better and better as we continue to improve our data. So I'm available for questions if anyone has it.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
I thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Reva, for that presentation. That was really helpful, for sure. And it was a lengthy document. So I guess I just want a little bit of clarification. I absolutely am supportive of, obviously, the fluid document, the asset management plan. That you make reference to, it would make sense to increase the tax by 1.4% annually, but we're already kind of doing this. So therefore, is the recommendation to do it, or we're already doing it?
Reva?
So through Your Worship. So the recommendation in the asset management plan is to increase by 1.4% annually, but that's not what, so council isn't saying, yes, we're going to update or increase by 1.4%, right? It's just the recommendation at this point in time. So what the draft asset management plan does not take into consideration is the fact that we're already increasing our levy every year for capital. So that 1.4% is just based on the information in the database at the time. So it was based on our 2019 levy. The funding gap was 5.4 million between what we actually needed in our capital requirements and what we actually levied. So, you know, that it's going up every year.
If I may, Your Worship, just to respond, thank you, Reva. That's the kind of clarification I wanted. So if we approve this plan today, we're not saying, yes, we're 1.4%, that's in. It's just, as you say, it's a fluid document and it's based on the present. So I get it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Julia?
I just want to add that when we do go through the budget process, as we have in prior years, this just helps to support why we are putting an increase in where we do. So it's not going to set out the exact amount, but when we do the budget, it provides further support to say why to our residents we are increasing the tax rate for that.
Thank you, Julie. So it's really guidance. It's a guideline. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, so I know I'll say I've been waiting for this asset management plan for a number of years. I'm happy it's here. I won't pretend to understand all of it, but I did read through it. It's a great document, and I understand that there's been a lot of work that's gone into it just in order to get an inventory of our assets and the condition that they're in and the cost replacements for what we would have to replace them at. So I'm glad we finally got it on the table, and hopefully we'll follow it, and hopefully we will eventually get to funding it at a higher percentage of less than 50. So, Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Reva and or Julia. The word fluid, is this taken into account, Reva, for instance, as we develop more efficiencies in our operations and so on and so forth? Is that what you mean by fluidity with regards to our asset management plan? Like, in other words, the more efficient we become, then it takes less stress off the increase in, towards our asset management totals, that kind of thing. Is that what you sort of mean by efficient or by fluidity, or is that part of it?
Reva?
So through Your Worship, so what I mean by fluid is that it's constantly changing based on the data that we put into our asset management database. So as condition ratings are updated or condition assessments are updated, as replacement costs are updated, it's going to change the amount of annual requirement that we need. It's going to change, you know, maybe when a certain asset needs to be replaced. Not so much with efficiencies, because, you know, it costs X number of dollars to replace a piece of road or something, right? Like, so, I mean, the efficiencies might come into the replacement cost factor of that. But yeah, fluid is more, you know, we're constantly updating our data, and it's just getting better and better and better.
Also, when we add a new asset or when we sell an asset and take it off, it affects our plan, and it affects the amount that we've got to put away for it. So it is ever changing and always will be. So, okay, if there aren't any more questions, you heard the resolution that we accept the draft as presented. All in favor? Thank you guys for all of that hard work. We're at bylaws and agreements. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Deputy Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that bylaw numbers 2020-65 to 2020-71 inclusive be reported and read a first, second, and third time and finally passes 27th day of July 2020. Do I have to read these? No. 65 to 71. Questions? All in favor? Those carried. Have a resolution moved by Councillor Withey and seconded by Councillor Thompson, whereas Council adopted Report Development 2020-37 draft discharge of firearms bylaw on June 24, 2020, and whereas members of Council and staff have since received multiple inquiries, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to seek additional public input and bring back a report and draft bylaw in August. Questions? Or Kirsten, did you want to speak to this before I took questions?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the resolution is quite self-explanatory. We have had quite a bit of public inquiries and questions as to where the information in the draft bylaw came from, and we thought it would be appropriate to go out and officially consult with everyone so we can make sure we've heard everyone's rationale for why they think things should change or not, and then come back and report to Council.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Worship. I'm curious on whether you think August is a sufficient time frame. I think we should probably maybe move it into September and give you more time to go through it and have an opportunity for everybody to have put input in.
Kirsten?
Thank you, Your Worship. We were looking at the Ontario OFAH, I don't know what it stands for, Fishing and Angling Hunters Association of Ontario, was kind enough to send the copy of the draft bylaw to their membership. And so we've been getting quite a bit of input, and I don't think that delaying it for another month would make that much of a difference, but we'd be happy to. The only consideration we were looking at with timing was whether or not the new bylaw would be in effect for the hunting season for 2020 at that point. So that's why we were thinking to do it sooner rather than later.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship. The genesis of this whole thing was about the boundaries, and it's sort of, I guess this document grew some legs and turned into a lot of other things that a lot of people weren't expecting. So that's why Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters got involved. I certainly got a number of calls. A lot of it surrounding the size of acreage that you need to have for target practice. A lot of it about why does this include paintball guns that my kids might want to run around my 2-acre forest and stuff like that. So I suggested to Tanya, perhaps we divide it and do the map thing. I'm content to keep it all in one thing. I think we'll get there. I think that, yes, there is hunting season, but there is also prior to hunting season, a lot of people want to do some target practice. You know, the point was made to me numerous times by hunters, and I've done it myself, is that, you know, we've all taken hunter safety courses. We all know what to do and how to set up target ranges and things like that. I want to practice. So prior to hunting and actually do it for a stress reliever year round. So that's kind of where the some of the backlashes come based on those types of things. I still, as I said, the main reason it was brought up was areas that weren't included in the no firing zones that wanted to be. So anyway, that's just that's just commentary on what's going on there. Thanks.
Councillor Schumacher.
So yes, I guess as my predecessor would say, what's good for my neighbor is always good for me. And I know that there's a lot of neighbors in my area, in the Stevenson's Disted, Port Sydney area, who have kind of reached out and to some extent, yeah, the size of the property, if you have an estate type property, a hobby farm, that type of thing, and you want to do some target practice, and people have, you know, expressed a group of people who get together and do some skeet shooting as a family, you know, thing on Thanksgiving weekend, all within reason, and of course have their firearms acquisition, all of those pieces that are in play, but want to still be able to recreationally do that type of thing. There has been some sort of talk back and forth, and that's what I'm getting. So it would be good, hopefully, yes, if we could get all that public feedback before we make the decision.
I think we've all been getting the same calls. It all revolves around pellet guns, paint guns, bows, and property sizes. So if staff's confident that they can do the public process within a month and address the things, I think everybody's been getting the same issues. So there's probably not that many different issues to address. And we've obviously got lots of contact information now between all of us. So I'm okay with the August date if staff's comfortable with it. Councillor Withey?
Thank you. Quick question, I guess, to Kirsten. I was wondering, I'm just sort of scrolling through the maps here. I was wondering if there was a property owner who owned a large tract of land, say 100 acres, that was adjacent to the boundary of this. Can they request that their property gets included in the boundary? And how would that work? I do know of a situation where somebody owns a large piece of property. They posted no hunting signs all through it. And then when walking through recently, found a couple of deer stands in there. So if they came to us and said, hey, I'm right on the boundary of this firearms thing, can we include my property? Is that possible? Is there a mechanism for that?
Through you, Your Worship, I suppose they could. I would suggest that they contact the OPP if they feel that someone's been trespassing on their land as well as a first step. But yeah, that's something we could definitely look at.
Councillor Armour, somebody has prepared a nice amendment to the September date if you want to move it, but I will give you that opportunity before.
I'd like to move to September, give them a couple months to look into it.
Okay, would there be a seconder for that? Councillor Stone? Okay, then I am going to read the motion. Moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the date of August be struck out and replaced with September. All in favor? That carries. So then the main motion, moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Stone again, all right? Whereas Council adopted Report Development 2020-37, draft discharge of firearms bylaw on June 24th, 2020, and whereas members of Council staff have since received multiple inquiries, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to seek additional public input and bring back a report and draft bylaw in September. All in favor? And that carries. Okay, so the first motion is just done now. Okay, thanks everyone. The next, we have another resolution that was pulled. A notice of motion on the property tax extension, and it was notice of motion was provided by Councillor Withy, the mover, and it needs a seconder before we can put it on the floor. And that was to Councillor Schumacher. You second that?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So that resolution reads, be it resolved that council extends resolution 143-20 for an additional 60 days to September 30th. And further, that notwithstanding the provisions contained in bylaw 2020-49, penalty imposed upon unpaid 2020 final property taxes after the tax due date be waived for 1 month ending September 30th. So in a nutshell, that means we extend the interim date of July 31st to September 30th, and we extend the final date of August 30th to September 30th. Questions? Councillor Withy, did you want to speak to it as you did the notice of motion?
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. I think, as I've reiterated in prior meetings, there are a lot of people that are struggling out there, and that any assistance, no matter how little it's taken up, as we noticed from the first go round, the first date, so many people paid anyway. I don't imagine anything will be different this time. I think there are folks out there that are struggling to make ends meet in this time, and that this wouldn't hurt as a gesture, however small, to help out. Thank you.
So I don't disagree with Councillor Withy. I worry about kicking the can down the road and the pile gets too big that might be insurmountable for some people. But can I don't know who knows the answer to this, but if we don't do this, is there a mechanism where people can ask staff to get some relief if they can prove some hardship?
Julia?
So we currently don't have a program for that. I do know one municipality that has done it, but it is quite a cumbersome program to come up with something like that. What we have done, and to be honest, we haven't had anybody asking. We haven't had many people calling and asking about the extension, but we have had some people that have reached out to us and asked us about programs to set them up. And they were quite happy with it because we have like programs where we can set up monthly payments for those people, so that that we can put them on a good plan, so that, as you said, Councillor Stone, they're not going to have this massive amount of debt, that they're working away at paying it off and how they can.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Withy?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I guess it's, I think it would be difficult to sort of have people pass a means test for this. I do think, as last time, it won't be utilized that often. I don't think it's up to me to just comment on how people spend their money personally. I can tell you I was asked yesterday by a retired person who works as a starter on a golf course about it. You know, obviously a property owner, and was asking the question. So it's out there, however small, and I don't think it's a big thing for us to take on.
Councillor Schumacher.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm prepared to support it. I do agree with Councillor Withy. I don't want to keep doing it. So yeah, let's look at 30 or 60 days. I don't think we keep rehashing this down the road to December to keep going on, but I think people are starting to get back to work and they're just starting. So most of them probably won't take advantage of it, but there are probably going to be a handful that can't get into a program or can't access that. CERB might be ending, may not be, but you know, as they start to get some of that momentum going, this is just a bit of a help.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So in essence, then this just applies to the penalty portion of it. We're still expecting people to pay the second installment of their taxes by the end of August. Is this the route we're taking here? This just applies to the penalty portion of it. And I guess ergo, it also applies then to if they wanted to delay paying their taxes till then. I guess it's the same thing. But we're still expecting people to pay their taxes till by August 31st. Is this sort of where we're going with this? A little bit confusing to me.
Well, we would hope that those who can pay their taxes would pay it by the due date of August 31st, but we're not going to charge penalty between the 31st and the 30th for anybody who doesn't. We would still encourage those who do to pay by the 31st. There'd be no penalty for anybody that doesn't pay until the 30th. That's the gist of it. Okay. I call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that Council approves the following amendment to the BIA Board of Management list of directors for the 2018-2022 term of Council, Resolution number 2619. The addition of Shelby Behrens Stevenson and the addition of Christina Clark. All in favor? That carries. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Armour and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald that Council approves the following amendment to the Huntsville Public Library Board for 2018-2022 term of Council, Resolution 14-19, the deletion of Melissa Lindsay. All in favor? And that carries. Okay, I have this is the Municipal Asset Management Program grant. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that Council direct staff to apply for a grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program for asset management systems and planning advancements in Huntsville. And further, that the town of Huntsville commits to conducting the following activities in its proposed project submitted to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Municipal Asset Management Program to advance our asset management program, obtain a citywide maintenance manager license, and implementing, updating, and providing training for the maintenance manager software. And further, that the town of Huntsville commits to the 2020-21 spending of $46,000 towards the cost of this initiative. Julia, do you want to speak to it, or?
I just wanted to let you know why it is on the table. There is a grant opportunity that we can apply for the FCM grant, but to do that, you actually have to have a motion of council that supports it. So it's just a bit of housekeeping for that project.
And this money is also already committed through the Municipal Modernization Fund, so it's not actually new money. It would actually just reduce our expenditure. All in favor? That carries. A resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that staff be directed to prepare a letter of support from the town of Huntsville to Enbridge Gas for the natural gas expansion program that will provide financial support to expand natural gas service in our area. There she is. Is she okay? Okay. Madam CEO, do you want to speak to this one?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's just a resolution which certainly would have more support for them to do the expansion in our area. And it's something that we typically would do, but a motion is required of council to proceed. So unless there's any questions, I'll try to answer it, but it's just more or less a motion of support allowing them to expand in our area.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Denise, our CAO, Corey, I should say. With regards to this, is there any indication from Is it Enbridge, the company?
Mhm.
Yeah, is to where they would want to expand or extend, I should say, services? Do they have any given us any indication where they might want to go with that?
So through your worship, we don't have that information as of yet, but we certainly can follow up with council on where they're proposing to expand. It's certainly a service that we know would be welcomed in the community. So we didn't ask a lot of questions when they were looking for a motion of support, but we can definitely get that to council.
All in favor? That carries. Okay, we're moving along. COVID update. Haha. Won't it be nice when we don't have COVID updates? The first thing I want to do is, on behalf of council and our staff, express our thanks to MBRP, who provided all the plexiglass to the town for their needs, not just in town hall, but in the theater box office, the Summit Center, the library, Muskoka Heritage Place. All of these buildings that are starting to reopen are all fully equipped with safe plexiglass barriers, and it's all been generously donated by MBRP. And so I don't think I ever have made mention to Ginger and Martin and thank them for that. That's a lot of plexiglass in our facilities. Thank you very much. Couple things that changed. Obviously, we had our special meeting to update our procedural bylaw because we are now allowed to have electronic meetings outside of a declared emergency. The only person who can, or the medical officer of health is still recommending electronic meetings, even though we would now be allowed to meet in person. The district decided last week to continue through the summer to meet electronically. And I think that I know I would be comfortable to continue through this summer too and look at it in the fall. But if anyone feels different on council about getting back together in person, we can certainly talk about it, and we would have to set up a facility larger than the council chambers in order to do it and practice social distancing. So I don't know if anybody has any specific feelings on that, or if you're happy to continue for another month this way. Yeah. Seen nothing really. I guess that's good then. So a few updates on our openings. Town Hall's been open for 3 weeks now. Lots of people still using the online options, which are great, but there's been walk-in traffic as well. Everything's been manageable to date, so that's good. The swim program at Hutchison and Port Sydney Beach been going very well, I guess. They've had over 144 registrations for swimming lessons, which is great. And MHP has been open for a couple of weeks. I don't know what their numbers are for sure, but I know the train has just started to run, and I think that is increasing attendance there. We did offer the ball diamonds to our user groups for August 1st. We would have 2 diamonds ready now, not with lights. However, all of our adult groups have notified us that they have canceled their seasons. So the only group interested in playing a little bit of ball are the Hornets, the kids' hardball program. And I'm not sure if they've actually made bookings or anything like that, but it would be nice actually to get some play on the new diamonds and give us a chance to maintain them because they're quite new. So hopefully that's good. I know everyone's quite aware of the push to get ice into the arena surfaces. Everybody's been getting the email. I'm not sure where the rumor came from that we weren't putting ice in. I don't think we ever discussed that we wouldn't do that. We've reached out. Gravenhurst is looking at getting their ice in for September 8th. That's not a confirmed date, but that's what they're looking at. Bracebridge is not looking at putting their ice in until October. But I think that we have to have our conversation sooner than later as to when we want to get ice in for the user groups. I think they've all been working with Parks and Rec staff to see what the demand is going to be and maybe what the start date is. So whether we're looking at something like September 1st or September 8th or maybe 15th, it just depends on who's interested in really using it early on. I think Bracebridge was talking about not wanting to put it in September and just have it sit there empty because people are still enjoying the outdoor facilities. So we'll have to have that conversation. The other big factor is that our Summit Center right now only gets a capacity of 50 people. The gym Motivations just reopened and they're opening at a capacity of 25. We have the Health Hub open, so our capacity in that building is only about 20 to 25 people left for the entire rest of the facility. The medical officer of health can increase that number or issue exemptions, but right now we don't have any. So that'll be another thing to look at for the 1st of September. I don't know whether there was anything else that was COVID related. We do have a resolution about the Summit Center fees coming up, but I think that was it for specifics to COVID. Any questions surrounding any of that? Councillor Stone.
Just a quick one. I've had comments about the desire to have the pool open as well. So while we're looking at the ice, we're looking at the pool as well, I hope.
Yeah. Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. Probably goes without saying, but I think we need to be not only looking at who might be using it, but how we can do this stuff safely. I'm really, I'm baffled about, I mean, I play hockey. I understand that other places they're making you change in your car or come in dressed, etc. But as the conversation goes on and we talk about, so what do you do at the bench, for example, then it's like, oh yeah, not really sure about that one yet. I heard somebody say that everybody playing hockey is going to be required to have full plastic masks on, but those masks have openings around your mouth where you breathe. I mean, you can't have a astronaut helmet on and play hockey. And then just the physicality of the game, where you're always going to be breathing hard in close proximity to people multiple times in any game. So stuff like that has got me thinking about these things, and you know, I think that it's not about what kind of people we can drag in to get things populated. We have to really make sure that we're taking all the precautions and putting all the rules in place and making sure they're enforced.
I totally agree with you. There's going to be a lot of protocols that have to be put in place before we get to that stage. But I just think it's important that the public know that we're working on it. It is only July still, so. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Further to Councillor Withey's comments, when it comes to the actual, for instance, you know, what equipment would be required and how you would be addressed, is that those regulations, would they be set down by the health unit, or would that be something that we'd be responsible for? How would we do that? I mean, I totally agree with Councillor Withey on this, but how would we go about determining what the requirements and restrictions are and how that would be assessed?
Director O'Brien, could you comment on I know there's stuff that we'll put in place, but there's also certain things from certain organizations. Can you enlighten us on the processes?
I'm not sure each group has it all figured out either. Each group has a return to play document pretty well that they're going by, but it only really takes it so far. So the questions that are being raised around, well, what about hockey and what about the masks and what about breathing? You know, the same kinds of risks are there for if you're in a fitness studio. So it's really about mitigating that. They speak to in the provincial document about no prolonged contact. And when we have been meeting with our ICE stakeholders and we've raised the question about what your organizations have defined as prolonged contact, it can be even as much as putting your hand on someone's shoulder. So I think the very nature of the game is going to change. What's allowed, what's not allowed, the mitigation plans for getting into the facility, out of the facility, and when you're in the facility, how you physically distance. Those are all the really detailed plans that we're working out with the stakeholders to make it a safe place. If it can't be safe, we won't be recommending a return to sport in that particular area. So everyone is really putting their heads together on this. I don't think any one organization has it figured out.
Councillor Withey?
See, I think, thank you. I think Councillor Fitzgerald, for example, would be good to play hockey because he spends all his time in the penalty box, so he'd be isolated.
Councillor Schumacher?
Fair enough. Through you, Mayor Terziano, to Director O'Brien, would we also have to look at like our staffing complement? Is there going to be some possibility of more enhanced cleaning if we're opening more change rooms to create that physical distancing? Do we need to look at our staffing complement and what that would mean then to reopen?
Yeah, our initial projections are that it's going to take for every hour of ice about 45 minutes of cleaning and sanitization of the area. You know, when we were working with the stakeholders, they were suggesting that, you know, some of the participants could do it too, but we see that as problematic from a waiver liability point of view, a training point of view, putting people at even more risk. So there will be impacts to the facility staff in terms of what's required, what's not. So we're looking at really all of the scheduling of that. So when someone's on the ice, what can be done to the areas that they just left? So that throughout a period of a day, you know, how many hours is that going to equate to?
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a further question to the ice rink situation. Do you foresee a break in scheduling? Are we playing every second hour on the ice, or I just see the demands for people in the building and space required. I can't see us running at full service level on the ice surfaces.
We are planning a report. Sorry, through you, Mayor Terziano, to Councillor Fitzgerald. We are planning a report for August, and in that report, there will be options: one for 1 sheet of ice at the Canada Summit Center, and the other for 2 sheets of ice. So what the scheduling looks like really depends on how many sheets of ice make sense, and what we move towards first. And then also, you know, for instance, if we were to move to 1 sheet of ice, there's going to be impacts on certain groups who are used to playing certain times of the day. They may choose then not to rent that sheet of ice because they haven't got their preferred time that they've had for years. So you know, we're just going to present some options and some costs and what the scheduling looks like, and certainly the protocols that we're working on with the stakeholders groups.
Okay. So we will be coming back shortly with all of that. Okay, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald, where as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the province of Ontario restricted certain activities in order to ensure social distancing and the elimination of gathering of large groups, including but not limited to recreational activities. And whereas a result of these cancellations and in an effort to further reduce the spread of COVID-19, the town of Huntsville closed all municipal facilities, including the Canada Summit Centre, leaving 3 tenants without access to their leased facilities. And whereas the Government of Canada implemented the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program for small businesses to assist property owners with providing their tenants with a rent reduction to assist with the financial hardships of COVID-19, the program states that CERCA will not apply to any federal, provincial, or municipal-owned properties where the government is the landlord of the small business tenant, thereby leaving tenants without any rent relief. And whereas a formal request was sent from the mayor to the prime minister and the minister of finance urging the government to remove the exemption for municipal government to access assistance through the CERCA program, as it provides an unfair advantage to business who occupy municipal space. Whereas no response has been received with respect to said request, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to waive the monthly lease fees for all current tenants at the Canada Summit Centre for the months of April, May, June, and July. So those are the 4 months that our building over there has been closed, and they have had no option to use their facilities. Questions? All in favor of the resolution? That carries. Okay. Electronic council and committee meetings, we kind of talked about that earlier. Nobody seemed to have any objections to staying for electronic, so we won't do that again. There's council correspondence for information. Broadband update, that's simply a group, the Muskoka Parry Sound Riding Cooperative Broadband Initiative, to all Muskoka towns, townships, to do an RFP to undertake a broadband gap analysis to identify and map areas where broadband internet is lacking. And each municipality was going to be asked to make a contribution to this RFP. And the district last week made the contribution on behalf of all 6 municipalities in Muskoka, plus the district themselves. So just as an update, the district is sort of spearheading that on behalf of all of Muskoka. So that's good. District updates. Who had a meeting? Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, but I'll make it short. I know it's the end of the meeting. So and we did have a CAPS meeting on July 23rd and approved a motion to go forward with the 5-year transportation needs assessment and growth sustainability plan. And so we endorsed the report that was before us and have directed staff to go out with a request for proposals for the procurement of a qualified transportation service provider. A couple of things about this whole transit plan: there will be a couple of new east-west corridors throughout the district. And so there are lots of different additions. And I just, rather than me explain it, it's on the district's website. And I think it's good news. We're moving forward on a more consolidated transit system for the district. At this point, we're not looking at integrating with our local, the Bracebridge and Huntsville systems, but that would be perhaps the next phase. Again, this was our committee. It has to be approved at council. We also approved a motion to increase the threshold for home values under the Ontario Renovates program in order to qualify for one of those for funding under that program. There was a cap on the value of your home, and we've just increased that cap to $435,000 to reflect the current market value of homes across Muskoka right now. So that just allows someone to apply for dollars under the Affordable Housing Program to help them renovate their home towards a secondary suite in their home. We had a number of verbal updates regarding the Housing Task Force. It looks like we may have a virtual Housing Task Force meeting no later than September, so that's good, as well as on the Social Services Relief Fund. So that was good. We of real interest to, I think, this council is we approved a motion to have the district planning staff submit a letter to the LPAT with respect to the Earls Road development in the town of Huntsville. I don't know if you'll recall, but that was a proposed plan of subdivision on Earls Road for over 900 units of housing. And they had appealed that application to the LPAT for lack of decision, for a non-decision. And the reason for the non-decision was there was a lot of back and forth between the district, our town staff, and the applicant as to the application and the fact that it doesn't meet a number of our current policy, especially the provincial policy statement, our new official plan, and there are myriad documents. So what we agreed was we would like staff, district staff, to prepare a letter to outline all of those concerns so that when that application goes forward to the LPAT, they have the district, you know, what might have been a recommendation to our committee. So that was supported unanimously. And I think that's all I'll report on at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Deputy Mayor Alcock? Councillor Thompson, did you have an engineering meeting?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we didn't have an engineering meeting, but there are a couple of things that I wouldn't mind commenting on. During our meeting, where we're at least our district council meeting, we're rolling a lot of our different committees into the meeting itself, into the main meeting, and of course that applied to Public Works. And there was one thing that came up that had me a little bit concerned, and I think also Councillor Withey, because he also commented on it, and it had to do with the cost of an overrun of about $1 million on upgrades at the Fairview water treatment plant. And when you're looking at an overage of like 5 million to almost well over 6 million, the money had to come from somewhere. And one of the areas impacted was the Scotts Point replacement. And my concern there was whether that would have an impact on the inlanding process for you know, eventually shutting down Mount View and transferring all waste out to the Golden Pheasant wastewater treatment plant. Anyway, turns out that we both all of council was reassured by Commissioner Hahn that would not impact on the timing at all. And so, but because it looked like they were taking some $300,000 out of a project at Scotts Point, but it didn't have an impact on this process at this point. But anyway, further to that, the district is looking at having a decommissioning of Mount View by the end of 2021. And that was, I know when I was talking to Director Marcus Furman about this earlier this year, that was sort of his pie in the sky timetable to have Mount View decommissioned. And that was reconfirmed again by Commissioner Hahn. He said the same thing. So that's reassuring. So that was just one of the concerns I had. But on a local level, people that live out in the Etwell Road and Yearly Road area will be happy to know that the Etwell Bridge is going to be completed as of tomorrow and will be open by the weekend. So people will be able to make that transition back and forth. Everything at Public Works in the town is going along smoothly. And for those of us living in the area where I am, in Chaffey Township, you'll notice that the slurry sealing has gone down on Old North Road and also on Fowler's Road. And it's a marvelous job and everything looks really, really good. So everything's going along swimmingly there. And that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Withey, did you have a health committee meeting?
No. No, there's not, haven't had a health meeting in a while. So we just listen to Chuck and do what he says.
Okay. And at the finance committee meeting, we did set the budget guidelines for water and sewer at 3.9% for this coming year, solid waste at 5.2%, and the tax supported operating levy was set at recommended at 4.1, which we actually reduced to 3%. So those three numbers will come to council, district council, and so whether they'll change there or not, but that's what the finance committee did with them. Okay, just a point of information, it's not actually on our agenda, but we were supposed to have the mountain bike club come back and it has been delayed because it is with their solicitor. It's not our delay, it's their delay. So just an update on that. If nobody has anything specific, I have a resolution to move us into closed session. Is there anything anybody wants to address before we do that? Okay, then I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public commencing now at 7:53 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following matters. Personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, confidential report CAO 2020-16, and confidential report HR 2020-05. All in favor? And that's carried. And everybody has to exit out and zoom back in on their other link. So see you in a minute. Thank you. Okay. Did we get everybody done? 3, 6, 7, 8. Everybody's back, even if their pictures aren't there. Tim, are you there? Because you're the mover.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Moved
I don't
by,
know what's going on with my picture.
moved by Councillor Withy, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2020-72 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 27th day of July 2020. All in favor?
Yep.
And moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 8:47 p.m. All in favor? Thanks, everyone.
Night.
Night, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.